Hello everyone and welcome to LEGO Star Wars Hot Takes episode 9. As always, if you have any hot takes or controversial opinions about LEGO Star Wars that you want me to discuss in next week's video, make sure to go ahead and leave them in the comments below. But without further ado, hopping right into it with the Brick Guy 909, he says, hot take, the 2003 Cloud City Boba Fett is the most overrated thing in LEGO Star Wars history. The fig isn't even that good. And yeah, I sort of do agree with you. I think when you look at the figure itself, I mean, it is a pretty dated figure, so obviously it's not going to be up to par with what we have today, so you could call it overrated in that sense. Although in terms of its value, I mean, I think it's pretty validated why it's so valuable. I mean, it was the very first LEGO Star Wars ARM printed minifigure, and that combined with it being Boba Fett is just obviously going to make the value go up. I'm not saying it holds up with the minifigures we have today, although for 2003 it was a great minifigure, and you have to keep that in mind because I mean, it is 20 years old. So yes, I think when you compare how the figure actually looks to figures we have today, it's not going to look as good and you might say it's overrated, although I think its value is pretty validated because it is really just about the status of having it, because again, it was the very first ARM printed LEGO Star Wars minifigure. Although that is just Boba Fett, I think the set itself is very overrated, and it's also a pretty ugly looking set too. I get the minifigure lineup is good, but the set itself is just boring. I've said before that I don't really like sets that are based on the interiors of buildings just because they don't look good on display, and this is really just a perfect example of that. I think the set is pretty ugly, although obviously the exclusive figures is making the value go way up. I mean, it's worth almost $10,000 now, and honestly for the past year I was expecting the hype to die down, but it hasn't at all. So I would like to say the value is going to go down eventually, but at this point I think it's just going to keep going up. TVV7RF says, hot take, battle droids should not change in the foreseeable future. Battle droids at the moment have a trait that no other LEGO figure has, virtually universal compatibility. Figures from 1999 can be paired with figures from 2023 with no discrepancy. The core design is sufficient even with the lack of leg mobility, and if LEGO made a new mold, it would just render the past 24 years of battle droids irrelevant, which I've always been irritated at with clones, for example. Now I'm gonna be honest, this might be the first hot take where I can't really decide a stance on it. I know the LEGO battle droid is a very iconic minifigure, and like you said, they've been making it for 24 years with no problem. Although I don't really like the idea of LEGO holding back on evolving their figures just because they have iconic ones. I mean, the Stormtrooper used in the early 2000s is a very iconic figure, and I know that's not completely comparable to battle droids because obviously battle droids don't have printing on them and their design is pretty good. So I don't know, I really am all over the place with this one. I mean, obviously I would love to see new battle droids with movable legs, although if we don't get that, I don't really mind, because I mean, the battle droids we have now have always worked. The only problem I've had with them is that over time they get pretty loose and they don't really stand up straight, but I mean, other than that, like you said, they've just been universally fine figures. So I don't know, I guess I'm just on both sides here. I would love to see new battle droids with movable legs, although I'm okay with the ones that we have today. JD Brick says, hot take, many LEGO Star Wars fans are very inconsistent on what they consider a good or a bad battle pack. For example, the Bounty Hunter battle pack, the 332nd battle pack, or even the Force Awakens First Order battle pack got a lot of hate for having named characters in it or many different characters. Yet the ARC Trooper battle pack is considered as one of the best ones just because it had an ARC Trooper, even though it is just as bad or even worse for army building as the other three previously mentioned. Don't get me wrong, I still really love the set, it's just the inconsistency in opinions that kind of bothers me a little. Now, I do think that fans can be very inconsistent with their opinions, and honestly I think a lot of this has to do with influence of bigger creators and just what they see online, but I don't want to get back into that again. Really, battle packs should not have named characters, and the ARC Trooper battle pack doesn't have a named character, although I do agree, yeah, it is a pretty crappy battle pack. I mean, basically you get a bunch of figures that would have fit way better in a bigger set, although unfortunately that is the only set LEGO has ever made an ARC Trooper in. So whether if it's a battle pack or a polybag or a UCS set, since that's the only time LEGO's made a very fan favorable clone trooper, at this point in 2023, 11 years later, in a sense we're kind of forced to like it even if it's a battle pack or not. So really the only reason it's considered a good battle pack is just because it's the only time LEGO has ever made an ARC Trooper. And not to mention the ARF Trooper included is really cool as well. Again, if all these figures were remade today, they would fit way better in a bigger set, although since this is the only time LEGO's made an ARC Trooper, it's kind of self-explanatory why it's held in such high regard whether it's a battle pack or not. The Ranger says, hot take, it's time for new blasters. I'm not talking about the terrible stud shooters, but we need an update on what we've currently got. Now, I'm just gonna go ahead and flat out disagree with you. I have the same stance about this as the other guy earlier had about the battle droids. The blaster we have now has worked for so long, and it's such a good design. We got three different types. We got the pistol and the rifle and then sort of the mid-size blaster, which is like the standard one, and LEGO started using it in 2007, and it has worked perfectly ever since. I honestly do not think the design should be touched at all. I like how there's three different types and they're compatible with any troopers, and you can also add stuff to them to customize them a little bit, which is even better. Now, if LEGO did make new blaster designs, I honestly wouldn't really care that much. Kind of like the battle droids, I mean, I really like the ones we have, and I don't think we need new ones, but if they made new ones, I mean, it'd be whatever. Unless LEGO made new ones and they were somehow worse than the ones that we have now, which honestly probably wouldn't even surprise me that much. But in the end, I don't think we need new blasters. The ones we have now are iconic, and they've always looked and worked perfectly. Jamie SCH says, hot take, minifig packs should have been used for named characters and battle packs for army building. The limited availability of minifig packs makes them bad for army building, as it's so difficult to get them in large numbers. That's not really an issue if you just want one for the set of 3 named characters. We could use this minifig pack to get more obscure named characters that are difficult for LEGO to fit into proper sets. If we can't have a Star Wars CMF series, then this would be the next best thing. And I completely agree with you on this one. They actually sort of did this back in the old days, back in 2000. They had the minifigure pack. I'm pretty sure there was one that came with like Darth Maul and Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader, and there's one that came with Chewbacca and 2 Scout Troopers. I think there was a Droids one as well. But yeah, if we got a modern version of that, that would be honestly perfect. And I think it'd be really cool to get like Jedi minifigure packs or like Sith minifigure packs, or I'll even go so far to say a Clone Commander minifigure pack with a few different named Clone Commanders or Clone Captains. I think that would be a great idea for named characters, and the unnamed characters and troopers can be stuck to the battle packs, where you can either use in the army build or use them to get cool figures that would fit into some sort of battle. Master Lego Cat says, hot take, LEGO investing is horrible because it drives up prices of minifigures and new sets. It also makes characters like the Phase 2 White Clone Trooper extremely hard to army build as well. And you know, hopefully this is the last time that I have to talk about this, but I do not think LEGO investing is bad at all, and I actually think it's a really good thing, and it's a really good thing for the community and the third-party market and just the overall value of Legos, in my opinion. And also, you talked about army building with the Phase 2 White Clone Trooper, which came in one set, which was the Microfighter Turbo Tank back in 2014, and that's at retailed for $10, and you got 1 Clone Trooper. So honestly, I don't even know why you'd be complaining about that. It was hard enough to get large numbers of them back then, and then of course, almost 10 years later, it's going to be even harder. I mean, that's kind of just expected. It's the same deal with the ARC Trooper that I talked about earlier. That was the only time LEGO ever made an ARC Trooper, and even if it was in a cheap set or not, it was still relatively hard to get large numbers of them. And then obviously today, they're just going to be valuable, especially if it's a fan favorable character. That's just basic supply and demand, and you have to apply that to LEGO Star Wars. But that's just for retired sets. Obviously, sets that are still in production are not going to have a short supply. And I've also seen people say that investors can artificially drive up the demands for sets and make the supply go down. And that is just not true. People act like there is a limited supply of LEGO sets. There is not a limited supply at all, unless it's a May 4th exclusive or something along those lines, obviously. But normal LEGO sets get hundreds and hundreds of thousands of copies produced. And if your local Walmart or Target sells out, you can go to another store, and if there's not another store near you, you can just go to one of the dozens of online websites that sell LEGO Star Wars. There is not going to be a shortage of LEGO, guys. LEGO investing is not bad. Although every now and then there might be a super rare case like the Clone minifigure pack from last year, but really the main problem with that was that it wasn't even sold at most stores. I don't recall ever seeing them at any Walmarts or Targets in my area. And also even worse, online LEGO limited how many you could buy. I think they limited to like 3 or 5 or something like that. So obviously when someone found them in a store, they were just not going to hesitate to buy all of them. But also I don't want to say that's completely the investor's fault. I say it's 50-50. 50% LEGO's fault for not producing and supplying enough of them and limiting how many you could buy online, and then the other 50% would obviously be the investor that buys all of them when he finds them at a store. So that is just a super rare case. Overall, LEGO investing is fine, and there is never ever going to be a shortage of certain sets. If you want it that bad, you will find it one way or another. But anyways, guys, that is it for this week. As always, if you have any hot takes or controversial opinions about LEGO Star Wars that you want me to discuss in next week's video, make sure to go ahead and leave them in the comments below. And if you're new, please consider subscribing, and if you want to check out more of my videos, you can see them on the end screen right now.